We have some breaking news coming out of random Friday here. It's January 24th. Mikko Rantanen has been just traded to the Carolina Hurricanes out of nowhere. Martin Necas is going back. Those are the two big pieces being traded for each other. Now let's go through the entire details. So Colorado gets Martin Necas, Jack Drury, both from Carolina, a second-round pick and a fourth-round pick. Carolina gets Mikko Rantanen and Taylor Hall. And Chicago gets a third-round pick and retains 50% of Rantanen's contract. Now, granted, the Rantanen's contract is up after this season, but, still, only a third-round pick is crazy. But I did not expect Mikko Rantanen to be traded this early into the season. I guess early.
I didn't even know he was available.
I didn't either. This wasn't the biggest thing that was developing over the last 48 hours. Vancouver tried to trade JT Miller to the Hurricanes. Vancouver wanted Necas. Carolina said no and moved on to Rantanen, which I think is a much better upgrade than JT Miller. And they get Hall in the process. When I saw that Taylor Hall was getting traded to Carolina, I was like, third-round pick, whatever, it's going back. I was like, sick. Taylor Hall's getting traded. We talked about it on our last
Carolina
episode.
one of the teams we mentioned in that?
No, I don't think so. I think it was L.A., Boston, Winnipeg, and whatever.
I think we threw Colorado in there, too.
Yeah, we did throw Colorado in there. What was your first reaction to this trade? Was it
Well, it started with me with this Taylor Hall getting traded because our buddy Chris texted us and said, "Hey, Taylor Hall's going to move, but it's a 3-team deal," and we didn't know who the third team was yet. And all we knew was Taylor Hall for a third-round pick, and that's not really a bad trade. I mean, I think that's about what Taylor Hall's worth, especially retaining that whole contract, that $6 million cap hit. Third-round pick's decent return for a player like Taylor Hall.
Yeah.
And then see the text Rantanen is being moved, and I was like, so Colorado's getting Rantanen and Taylor Hall. This is before I knew they were giving up Martin Necas. And I was thinking, did they just win the Stanley Cup? What is going on right now? And then more details came out. And honestly, I don't really think Carolina gave up a whole lot to get Mikko Rantanen.
I know you might want to build a super team if you're Carolina, but in order to get Mikko Rantanen, who, by the way, is probably a top 5 player in the league, if you don't think he's the 5th best player in the world, you're probably smoking crack, to be honest with you. You have to give up a guy like Martin Necas in this deal if you're Carolina, and they didn't. I do think Rantanen is a better player than Necas. I know Necas is on a high right now, and he got off to a great start this season.
But, I mean, he's having a career year. He's probably this is probably gonna be the best year of his career. Now he'll go to Colorado. He'll play in a line with Nathan McKinnon. He'll keep getting better.
Carolina needed not only a depth scoring, but they also got their number 1 player in Rantanen. Now, I'm not saying they didn't have it because, like I mentioned, Martin Necas, Sebastian Aho is one of the best two-way centers in the league. But
him and Rantanen are going to be so much fun to watch together.
Throwing Rantanen and Aho next to each other, and Colorado had a decision to make. It was either pay Rantanen $14 million, which is what his asking price was, or trade him, and they decided to trade him. And I know McKinnon loses his right-hand man, but Colorado just wouldn't be able to afford him, Makar, and McKinnon. So you have to pick your poison, and obviously they picked Rantanen to trade, especially with his contract coming up, and they just signed McKinnon to what? McKinnon has 6 or 7 years left on his current deal.
It's really interesting with Colorado because they made a conscious decision that they're not going to re-sign Mikko Rantanen. I'm sure he would have liked to stay there, but
yeah,
if he was not budging from that $14 million price range, I don't really necessarily blame Colorado for moving on from there. I think they get a lot more value back in a trade if Rantanen gets traded with an extension attached to it. Obviously, that's not going to happen when a player is asking for $14 million. That's something you'll kick down the road, and maybe he really likes in Carolina. He gels really well with Sebastian Aho and the Hurricanes, and he decides to take maybe $12.5 million to stay there.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a mission for Carolina to try to get Rantanen re-signed. With the money he's asking for, and like I said, it's going to be a really big thing of how he fits with that team. It's going to be very different for him going from playing with Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar, playing with a more defensively minded team in Carolina.
I'm pulling up their lineup right now, the Hurricanes lineup, because Rantanen now is going to be the number 1 guy there. I love Aho, but Rantanen is going to give you, 50 goals? He's going to give you 110 points. Why is this not pulling up? I don't know. But the Hurricanes added, I think, everything that you want in Rantanen and Hall. And
I
I
mean,
think
I really
this
like the pickup of Taylor Hall too. I mean, I know
it's
we're not talking about that because Rantanen's the big name in this trade, but Taylor Hall's a solid get for this team. They'll
and
probably plug it on the second or third line. He's coming from a horrible Chicago team, so I'd imagine he'd have to be a little bit better in Carolina.
I think he will be better in Carolina. And this is I think there's two winners that come out of this. I know Colorado got rid of the big fish, which is Rantanen, but you also get a big fish in Martin Necas. Plus, you get a center depth in Jack Drury too. That is the big thing. It's like I know they traded for Casey Middlestad right at last year's trade deadline, gave up Bowen Byram. This year, you knew you weren't going to be able to get Rantanen inside because you won't be able to afford him. You snagged Necas and you snagged Jack Drury. Drury has been a very good piece for Carolina this year.
Yeah, he'll be a solid guy for their bottom six. Yeah,
and then
for
you
sure.
get a second-round pick and a fourth-round pick. Like, I know, like, especially coming from Carolina, those are going to be closer to the late-round picks. But it doesn't matter, though, because draft picks in Colorado, like, they could hit on those for all we know. They could turn into the next
Yeah,
superstar.
I mean, but you can get the first overall pick and still not hit on the draft. Like draft picks are always going to be kind of a lottery thing where
yeah, no matter what. Unless
you might get a great guy, you might get a horrible guy that never plays a game in the NHL. We'll never know with that. I think the picks aren't really important right now. I think the more important if you just look at the players and where they're going, I think Carolina wins this trade easily.
Oh, yes, they do.
Because you're getting the best player in the trade in Mikko Rantanen, who's going to immediately go on their first line and be an elite winger for them.
Mm-hmm.
And you get Taylor Hall to show up. He could play on the second line, third line, that middle part of the lineup. He's a veteran. He's former MVP. Like, just that experience he'll have will be invaluable to the team. You know, Colorado, I really don't love the return for them. I think the biggest thing for Colorado is it gives them a little bit more flexibility going into the future with their roster, because you can't have, Nathan McKinnon making 12.6, Cale Makar making 9. You know, you're gonna have to pay him, he only has 2 years left on his deal after this, and he's gonna get whatever he wants because you pay Makar whatever he wants. He'll probably get more than McKinnon.
Yeah.
But it gives you a little bit more flexibility just going into the future with some of the moves you can make. I mean, maybe Necas will sign a long-term deal there. He still does have another year under contract with the Avalanche. So
at $6 million.
they at least get 2 years out of a player like that instead of, knowing that this is probably going to be Rantanen's last year on the team, no matter what.
This is a long-term move for Colorado. They know, I think this move, Colorado their hand was forced into doing this. And I think
I think they had to make a decision where it was whether, do we think we have enough to win the cup now and hold on to Rantanen, or can we move him now, maybe retool a little bit, they'll probably be a playoff team still, just get more assets for the future, get some more money to spend so we can just make this roster better, because I don't think this lineup's good enough as it is to win a Stanley Cup. Yeah, I mean, I know you have an elite top line, elite defenseman, but outside of that, I don't know if this team has enough to, make a deep playoff run like they have in the past. But it's going to be really interesting what Colorado does.
Yeah, they'll I think Colorado has understood that this is not the year that they're probably going to go win a cup, especially with Winnipeg, Vegas, Dallas in there,
you got some good teams in the East too.
Right. You have Carolina, Florida, Toronto looks great, New Jersey, Washington. So I think Colorado has made the smart decision to move on from Rantanen instead of losing him for completely free when you know he's probably going to become a UFA and just not sign. You get something back for him. And I think this is Colorado being more proactive than reactive, because whether something happened at the deadline with Rantanen, you trade him then, or you lose him in free agency, you try to get a deal done and nothing works out, then he leaves. Now you're shut out of luck. Now you have to go just pay another guy $12, $13 million in free agency and try to, at least. You're not guaranteed to get him. So,
but this leads me to another question I have for you. So let's say Rantanen does not re-sign with the Hurricanes. I'm sorry, it's got to get used to that. Does he become the highest paid UFA player in NHL history?
Until Connor McDavid, yes.
I'm talking. No, he's
he's not going to become
a free agent player, not re-signing with his team.
Yeah, sorry.
I think that's a different thing where he's on the open market and teams are meeting with him and he can choose who he wants to play for.
Yes, I think he will. He definitely will. He'll get, like I said, $14 million minimum is going to be his asking price. Maybe a team is like, fuck it,
Well,
here's
this
$15
might be a
million.
wild offseason because there's a very decent chance that Mitch Marner's going to be a UFA too.
And he's going to want, what, $13 million with the
He's
season
gonna
that
get.
he's
They're
having
both going
right
to get a lot
now?
of money. I mean, the only problem is I don't know how many teams could afford to pay him that are going to be competitive.
Fuck it. Oh, well, I
But
guess.
if you get a guy like that, that might make you competitive.
I mean, that's true. Like, if Rantanen does hit the open market. Now, I have a question for you. If
Okay.
Rantanen hits the open market and they don't re-sign him and they don't win a cup, is this a lost trade for Carolina, even if they make it to the cup final but don't win it?
I say yeah. I think. I mean, I actually, I'm gonna say probably no. I mean, I don't think they gave up a lot, really. I mean, I know you're giving up a really good player in Martin
Mm-hmm.
Necas, a good depth piece in Drac Jury, but you're also getting Taylor Hall back with a third round pick, which I think is a steal. I think Taylor Hall will be really good in Carolina.
Yeah.
And you get the one of the best players in the league in Mikko Rantanen. My issue with Colorado, I mean in Carolina, is their goaltending situation. I don't think is
Mm-hmm.
the greatest right now, and I think if anything will hold them back from winning the cup, it will be that. Maybe they think, well, maybe if we score more, we don't have to really worry about.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's a valid way
It is,
to
though.
address that.
It
Like we could
is.
score more. Maybe we don't need to. And they ran into hot goalies the last two playoffs in a row. Even when they've gotten good enough goaltending, they couldn't score. So
This.
maybe Rantanen's kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
we know he can score in the playoffs. He's won a cup. Like we need a guy that we know can put the puck in the net when it matters.
They've rode with basically the same roster since they became competitive in 2019 or 2020 around that area, and they're like, fuck it, we need to change because if they, I know Bobrovsky isn't playing good, but playoff Bob has been different the last 2 years. You run into
But
just
Florida still has a really good team in front of them. They could shut
right.
a team down
You have
defensively.
right, and then let's say you run into Igor Shesterkin. You run into Logan Thompson or Lindgren. Like you need somebody that can put the puck in the net, and I think Carolina has lacked that in the playoffs the past 3-4 seasons,
Yeah, they
and it's
definitely
shown.
have.
Yes,
Yeah.
they have. So Rantanen is that guy, and I love this for Carolina. I love it for Colorado. We'll just see how it pans out because this feels like a short-term thing, at least until the offseason, and then get into a little bit of it. If Carolina wins the cup after this trade and Rantanen ends up leaving anyways, they win the trade no
Oh,
matter what.
if you win the
Yeah.
cup, it doesn't matter.
Right, we
Like
talked about it on just our past episode. You win the cup after a trade with that player on your team, and especially if they're a sole part of it, you win the trade no matter what. Until the other
I mean,
team,
even if he's not like a sole part of it, like let's just say they go on a deep playoff run, he only has like 10 points, which would be crazy, but they still win the cup. You still win the trade
yeah,
because you won a cup. No matter you win a trade, I think no matter
that's
what,
valid.
unless like Nate just leads to like 2 or 3 cups for Colorado, which you never know. I mean, they have Nathan
Be
McKinnon, they have
nuts.
Cale Makar.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. And the only other thing, the team we haven't talked about at all is Chicago getting
Why?
a third round pick. I don't know what they're
What are
doing. I get Carolina's taking on the full $6 million, it
Yeah.
appears, of the Taylor Hall contract, and I think a third round pick is good value for that. But
I
you're also retaining half of Mikko Rantanen's cap hit for this year, so it's 9.25. So it's going to be around like 4.7 ish
mhm.
in that ballpark, 4.6 dead cap. I mean, they have plenty of cap space. It's not an issue for them. You know, I know it is up at the end of the year, but you can't even get like a 5th or 6th round pick for that. Like just for like, hey, like if we don't do this, this trade is impossible. You don't get your guy. Like just throw me a bone here, buddy.
That is so crazy that like we see this in the NHL a lot where a team like Chicago will be like the broker and is like, you want to take on 50%? So like, yeah, you know what? Because I think as GMs like the teams like Chicago, we saw it in Arizona a lot with Marullo. Like they'll take
Minnesota
on
did it a lot too.
right. Minnesota did it, and it's because well now maybe if they want to get a guy in a future trade, you know what? Maybe we'll ask for instead of a second round pick, we'll ask for a third or fourth round pick type deal, right? It's now I'm not an NHL GM. I've never been in an office, so that could be complete bullshit that I just spewed. But I just like my
I mean, typically from what
examination.
we've seen, when teams do step in, I mean, this is a little different because Carolina is getting a player
Mm-hmm.
from a significant player from Chicago, and I think that's what the third round pick is going for. It's just for straight out Hall, straight up. Maybe it was a 4th round pick that turned into a 3 because they retained salary. I mean, I'm not sure what GMs view Taylor Hall's value as at this point in his career. He's having a pretty bad year, all things
Yeah.
considered, like stat wise. But you got to remember how bad that Chicago team is on.
Mm-hmm.
He's on like any player worth a damn. Even Bedard's not having the greatest season for his standard. I know this is his second year, but still. So I mean, you can't. I maybe that's. We're gonna have to wait and see. Like maybe Elliot Freeman, Frank Saravelli, the two guys who broke this trade. Shout out to the Empty Netters podcast too. They were kind of teasing this a couple days ago.
They did, yeah.
Yeah, so they knew something was going on behind the scenes before everybody else did, because I mean, like, it caught both of us off guard completely. So maybe we'll see in the coming days if it was a 4 that turned into a 3 because of that retention, and maybe 4 was all they were getting for Taylor Hall because they are taking on that full $6 million cap hit. It's interesting. I still don't like it for Chicago. I feel like you could have got I mean, if you just get a 5th or 6th round pick. I know some people are saying, "Oh, who cares? Like, it's a 5th or 6th round pick." It's like you never know. It's like it's like a lottery ticket. We were talking about this before we recorded. Like when you get a draft pick, even if it's a 7th round pick, you can get a Hall of Famer, like what Detroit did. They got Hendrik Zetterberg in the 7th round.
I do think the argument for Chicago in this deal is, well, we would have given up Taylor Hall for a 4th round pick or 3rd round pick, whatever. We're taking on 50% of Ranson's salary. Who cares? Like, we're not getting a player. Like, I don't really care. Like, I'll just do a solid. Okay. Kevin Weeks tweeted a picture of Pittsburgh. Okay.
This is not about this.
No.
Not about this.
Okay. Crosby's going to the Avs. So
I'd love that. That would be amazing.
The reason I laughed, I know I'm off topic. The reason I laughed is because I went on Twitter to see any updates. First thing I saw was Biz talking about Crosby to the Avs is now back on the table.
That would be. I would love that. That would be amazing.
Oh, that would be great. Anyways, back to the trade. Yeah, I think for all, like, both Carolina and Colorado winners, I think Chicago's a clear loser, and then we're just gonna have to wait to see how this trade pans out in the next couple of years.
So, what do you guys think of the trade? Who won the trade? Who lost the trade? Let us know in the comments. Let us know what you think.
Thank you guys for watching until the end of the video. If you guys did, all of our socials are down below. Subscribe, notification bell as well. Go follow our Instagram for more exclusive content. We'll see you guys in our next episode.